So looking at what we did the last time, I think we're together enough. So these darks in and around the darks in and around the cactus, I think are going to be dark enough now. And so I can go ahead and take my masking fluid off. And if I have to come in and do some little tiny bits, I can, but I've got the majority of it done. So I think that's our next step, is to go ahead and get that masking fluid off of there. So let's go ahead and do that. I always love this when this comes off, don't you guys? Especially when it's being sort of as dark and it's almost sort of dark and gloomy right now. And so taking that off and getting those whites back in there, just open it back up. So Gary's got his fun project over here today. Everybody except for Dan has done that project, because you've probably done something similar to that when you took Pablo's class where you did layers.
No, not exactly.
Okay. If at some point you want to do this project, it's a nice exercise in how layering is so effective. And also that whole thing of letting us see light and dark. So this is, you know, a single color, a monochrome painting. And so you can see the light and dark in it much easier than if you've got colors. And that's always, you know, something like this. We've got so much color in here that sometimes we lose track of where the light and dark is as we're thinking about, oh, I need green, I need yellow, I need red. And rather than thinking about I need light and dark. Everything I've read says, you know, if you get your values right, it doesn't matter what colors you use. So you can get away with almost any color if your values are correct. And those of us that love color don't necessarily agree, but I can agree that sometimes a value study can be just as exciting as that final painting.
Sometimes they're always saying, oh, you shouldn't have more than 3 values.
Well,
that, or 5, or 3, you know, and I don't know how that could even be possible. Three values. 3 values.
Well, when you're doing a value study, you probably do want to think about 3 values. But this one that I'm having Gary do, you know, we've got how many values here?
4, 5,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there's 5 values in here as we build it up. And so each layer becomes another shift in the value. I mean, the finished one, that finished one with, you know, this has got even more values, but there's a subtle gradation from one to the other. And so then you start, the whole picture really comes together and gets exciting because you've got the value between white and almost black in here, and then the range of other colors in between. So, you know, when we're getting into color, we have a tendency to not see that. But value wise, I mean, if I were to take a black and white photograph of this, which is another way to double check your values, is to take a black and white photo. You know, I range from white, and then it's fairly light midtones back in here, fairly light midtones in here, and then quite a few darker pieces because this is a backlit piece. And so we've got quite a bit that's in shadow. And so what we're wanting to accomplish next on this is seeing how the backlit works on these cactus. And so this whole thing of, you know, that halo of light around that edge, but it's not totally dark inside of here. It's dark midtone, and even down in here, it's not totally dark. So really those darks that I put in are the darkest bits in the whole painting. Okay, so it's the next thing is how are we going to mix those colors? The cactus is a blue green. It's a bluish green. And so starting with my ultramarine blue, it tends to make bluer, grayer greens. So it's going to be a good color to start with on this. And then if I add, let's add a little bit of burnt sienna to it. Burnt sienna being slightly on the yellowy orange side. That's going to get us really gray. We don't want to go totally gray. So let's get some New Gamboge in here. And I'm thinking that's a little too yellow. Add a little more blue to it. This is starting to get really close. And you know what I forgot to pull out? And then it's a scrap of paper. The trial page is so important. I think that's actually going to be a pretty good color. So that was ultramarine blue, New Gamboge, and a little tiny bit of burnt sienna. And that's going to work pretty good for these guys. And I'm not going to try and get all that detail. There's a, you know, if I were going to spend quite a bit of time on this, I could get more detail, but I'm going to hope that the granulation that happens with the ultramarine blue will give us some of that texture. And let's see, I've got to stop right here. And if anybody wants to, you know, sort of get behind me there, you can do that too. This is my other one right here. And I also, this is what we call negative painting, where I'm going to pick up the shape of something with what I'm painting behind it. And then we also, let's just let that be a little uneven. And I could, oh, this might work. Let's do this. Well, this is slightly dry. Let me just put a couple of lines down in here. Oh, good. That's going to push the paint away a little bit and make that a little uneven. And we're going to get a little bit of that feeling of those lines of cactus. And let me just get this edge a little uneven here. Okay. Of course, I should have started with that one. Always. There's one that I always want to do that's on the right hand side here, and then that's where my hand's going to be. So let's stop here and come back over to these guys here. Blue to it because it's further away, and if it's further away, they tend to be more blue. It's just a little bit is. Instead of those prickers being all white around it, I can color them a little bit, and that's going to make them go back a little bit more too.
That's a good idea, because otherwise they kind of pop off.
Yeah. Because the further away they get, the less you're going to have that bright white around them. And down in here. All right. Now this one, this guy comes all the way down. Okay. All the way down into there. And this one behind is a little bit more yellowish, yellowy brown. It's a little more yellowy brown on that side. It's nice to actually see that there's some color shifts that happen. It's going to look more natural. Now, this is the difficult area. I want those prickers. I want the prickers on the piece. There's prickers along this edge, and I want them to stick out into there. So I'm just painting around them. Worked. Okay, good. And let's just set a little darker on that side. A tiny bit. I've got to be careful about coming in here too soon with my darker lines because they'll start just bleeding up into there. But I do like that that side feels slightly darker. And now, oh, as it comes down into here, this is actually darker than its background, and that's dark down into there. Find its way into that shadow. Okay, now let's see if I can do the rest of these. I wonder if texture. And we gotta be careful where we. Oh. Forced myself to change the shape of this slightly because I painted too close. Yeah, Gary, you should be able to find a plug-in in that far room. That'd be great.
Right.
Thank you. Let's see, there's a piece right here that comes to this one. And then that's light. Dark down here. This is a time when the fact that ultramarine blue tends to granulate is really working. Look at how it's making that textural feel of those in there. I'm really liking that. You know, sometimes ultramarine blues granulation bugs us, but other times it's like, oh, this actually works pretty darn well. And this has to go a bit darker. I think actually there should have been a break in between a couple of them there. Maybe I can come back and do something to make that stand out a bit more. And that needs to be pricker-ish. Uneven edge, okay. And then it's darker down here in this bottom. Look at how much darker it is right down in here, and maybe comes all the way to that. That one stand out, be a little darker there, be much darker right there. Okay. This other cactus down in here that I've got the red on the top of now needs to go darker, but I want still a feeling of the prickers. So I'm doing this sort of marks to make that look like that's happening without getting too much into it. And that's my edge there, okay. And then it's dark right here at the very bottom of it. That's working. And I've used up all my paint. We're actually a little tiny bit more yellowish in this, so it's okay, but I went and used that all up. So we're still going to do that same combination, little tiny bit of brown to gray that down, and then I said new gamboge. But maybe make it a little bit more yellow. Whew. These are harder. Might end up having to come back in at the end with a little bit of opaque paint or one of those opaque pencils and draw some stuff in here.
You can get those white ink
Yeah,
right? Where you can do a very fine line.
line, and that actually works really nice for little.
I never get those to work, right? You know,
Oh, really?
a lot, ones I have.
I
You
haven't
have to
really-
Press them to get the paint to come out of the.
Oh, to start?
So I think there's better kinds.
What I did was I went back, having lifted the PBO, and I went back and drew in.
Oh, I could have done that, drawn the
Bricks.
PBO back in again and get some more of those
So I
back
put it
in.
for the center.
Mm,
No, I just went back with the.
with the
master
PBO.
And drew little spiky lines in the middle of my prickly hairs.
What a good idea. Should we do just a tiny bit of that? Let's try a little bit of
It
that.
dries really fast. That way when I paint them, I get, you know, the weird. Because they have big prickles on them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Let's try a little bit of that.
So I can find some cups. Or you do your plastic shot glass.
Yeah, that's what this is a plastic
Yeah.
shot glass.
Travel shot glasses.
But I pour too much in there, I mean, that's what I.
It's easy to get a lot more than you need when you pour it in, but just having something separate to put that in really helps. Okay, so
That's one thing I'm gonna get the.
and some of these are going to come back into here further too. So it's not like they're all right at that edge. Yeah, I've forgotten about that. I've had my mind so much on that mural project that we're working on. The rest of this has been out of my brain.
That's a big project.
How's it going?
It's come along pretty good. You guys have to look at it when you come back. Both Dan and Pat came and helped last week, and you know, they helped me tape in the design to start with on Monday, and then Tuesday we came back and painted a bunch of it, and then Thursday some people came back and painted a bunch more, and so we've got most of the major colors in now, and so the next stage is the fun, scary part.
Yeah, the artist must have been working out.
All the details.
What kind of paint you use for that one?
It's a special acrylic paint. So it's not house paint. It's, you know, like the acrylic paint you buy in the tubes, but it's been thinned down to a consistency that's so nice to paint with. And it's supposed to have a really high pigment content so that it doesn't fade easily. I buy it from a place over in San Francisco called Precita Eyes. They are known nationally as the place to buy mural paint. And they sponsored and got involved with a lot of those murals that are being done in San Francisco over in the Mission District. Yeah. And they've got a pretty big range of colors, but you still end up having to mix some of your colors. And
I have
I think that's not dry.
a stencil for birdhouses that I wanna
Oh,
do on my fence,
Mhm.
on a wooden fence. And I have a regular acrylic paint.
Yeah, and they actually sell a coating that you can put on top of it. I don't normally pour this back, but I barely, to make it more UV protected. And Golden, who, you know, sells through Blick and Flax, also sells mural paints. And I think they sell some of that UV protection. So if you're just needing a small amount, that might be another way to go with it.
Very big.
The smallest this company sells it in is in 4-ounce jars. So, which is a surprising large amount of paint.
That's because it covers so well.
Yeah, covers super well.
To pay you money.
Yeah,
I will say that we just the whole thing first. So,
we did.
yeah.
What did you say the name of that place was again?
PRECITAS, Precita Eyes.
So gesso is like a water-based base paint that.
It's an acrylic based paint and it's got more thickness to it. than regular paint. And mine actually have more particulate ground in it. You can get a special one for painting watercolors on top of that has even more particulate matter in it.
Wow.
And so, you know, most of your gessos you can't paint watercolors on top of very well because it just absorbs in. But this special one, you can actually do pretty good painting watercolors on top of.
If you would
Yeah.
want to paint on top of gesso. But I suppose,
Well, this way you can paint on wood, you can
Yeah.
paint on plastic, you can paint on a variety of things.
I accumulated a huge number of bottles of acrylic pure paint because I did people marketing.
Oh, you know, that acrylic paint might work pretty well. But your big thing is you want to try and get this clear coat to go on top to protect it.
Right.
if Ryan has some more, if you've got some.
Yeah, yeah, it may be perfectly good. As long as it's got a lot of pigment on it, just pick some prickers out up here while we're waiting. See if this will work. Little skinny brush water. We're just doing a little lift here.
That's a good idea. That's where I was like, we go, am I just gonna leave those?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do too many of them, but just on the edge of this. And it's relatively dark back behind there, so it should stand out.
You're just pulling the paint out.
Just lifting. And our other choice here is going to be to come in with that, the little pen or even a white pencil. Okay, is this dried enough that I can paint down in here? No, it hasn't.
You can't use a hairdryer to dry it.
I can. I can. Gary knows where that hairdryer went.
So,
Yeah, I've actually not driven to, because they're on 395. Is it on 395? I can't remember now.
I used to go river rafting on the Klamath,
Mhm.
and you go to Shasta and then you go west from there.
Right,
Actually
right.
put it in Happy Camp, which burned to the ground, you know, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I still got, I remember that.
Okay, so we've got these other cactus here, and they're gonna vary a little bit in color too. So let me just get a little more of a yellowy cactus color here. So I'm seeing some of these as being a little more light yellow. This is much easier to be able to paint across this way and not have to paint around all of those. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, you know. Live and learn.
Live and learn. So I'm doing a varied color here. So I started a little more of a yellowy green at the top. It needs to go just a little bit darker though than that. And then went into this bluey green, and then I put some more blue at the very bottom. So this is the bluey green. And then a little more actual blue here at the bottom to make that dark area. And then coming up a little more greenish as it comes up into the top of this. Sort of pretty when you do this little variation on these. And I'm gonna take that pretty much right out to that edge. And I'm leaving a little bit of light on that one because I didn't really get as much stuff on there as I probably should have. And once again, I think I didn't leave a light area that I should have left, so let's just leave that. And make this darker right down in here. Make this darker right in there. Oh, we didn't paint that one. Green is one of these colors that if you paint it too thick, it looks icky. So think about painting it as thin as you can and still get the value shade you want. So that's why I took a little bit off of there because it was looking a little too thick, a little too, and I need to get that a little darker right there. Yeah, a little too thick. yellows have a fair amount of particulate matter in them to make them thick enough so that there's some volume to it. But the disadvantage of it is the fact that, and you know, these guys can go a little bit darker in some of these spots. And yeah, there was another piece of this back here. And just, so it's not a lot darker. So it's like what Gary's doing with his other piece where you're just doing a little light layer on top there to get that striation.
I'll give it some dimension to it.
Yeah, this thing has, speaking of dimension, this thing has no dimension. Let's just lift a little off this one side of it. And that being just sort of a blob of color, which maybe that's all we really wanted there anyway, is a blob of color. Just give it a little shape around one corner of it. And you know, that's gonna have to dry before I can do anything else there. Let's just do a little bit of dark on these guys. I think I'm getting really close to saying I really need to step away from this painting. Oh, that can't be light right there. That has to be dark. And maybe that gets a little, oh, we were gonna do a little brown on these prickers back here, weren't we? Send that guy back. So that's a very pale brown that I put on there. I want to make sure I don't get it too dark, but I can take it right over this other green color since that was a little off anyway. And this one right back here needs that too. And this needs to go darker down here. Otherwise, it's not going to want to sit into that shadow at the bottom. So if I had that too light, then it's not going to look right to have that dark of the shadow underneath of it. So that needs to darken up just a little to come into there. Same with these guys. I think I need to stop on this. Let me put this up on the, and then once it dries, we'll pull off that resist for those other. So let me put this up here. Turn, that thing's finished.
Also, can you send me the picture before